Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching SAMAA News. Here are today's headlines. Pakistan will continue its efforts to mediate between Iran and the United States in a bid to preserve regional peace and prevent further escalation. According to a Foreign Office report presented to the National Assembly, Islamabad considers preventing the expansion of the Iran-US conflict its top regional priority and remains committed to diplomacy, dialogue and conflict resolution. Officials also noted that Pakistan is assessing the potential economic and strategic consequences of prolonged regional tensions, while continuing to engage with all parties involved. Iran says its navy fired warning missiles and drones near US warships in the Gulf of Oman, accusing American forces of interfering with maritime traffic and seizing commercial vessels. The claim was reported by Iranian state media, which said the action was intended as a warning to US naval forces operating in the region. Meanwhile, the US Indo-Pacific Command announced it had intercepted a sanctioned vessel in the Indian Ocean, saying Washington would continue maritime operations targeting networks accused of supporting Iran. A reported heated phone call between US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has highlighted growing tensions between the two leaders. According to reports, Trump described Netanyahu as crazy during the exchange, a remark he later publicly confirmed. Israeli officials say the incident has created political challenges for Netanyahu at a sensitive time, with national elections approaching and questions emerging about his relationship with Washington. US President Donald Trump has said that Washington did not need a deal with Iran to get enriched uranium from the country. He told reporters in the Oval Office that Washington could get it right now, and that he did not think Iran could stop it if it wanted. Trump also said that he did not want to meet with Iran's supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, but he added that if Washington and Tehran reached a deal, it was possible that the two would meet. Iran's supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, says the country's adversaries have failed militarily and are now shifting tactics toward internal destabilization efforts. In a written message delivered during commemorations marking the death anniversary of Islamic Republic founder Ayatollah Ruhollah Khamenei, Khamenei said external actors are now attempting to weaken Iran through division and psychological pressure. He described these actions as part of what he called hybrid warfare, aimed at undermining national cohesion rather than direct battlefield confrontation. Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has said that there can be no lasting peace in the region unless Israel withdraws from Lebanese territory. In a statement carried by Iranian media, the IRGC called for an immediate halt to attacks in Lebanon and urged Israel to pull back behind internationally recognized borders. The statement comes as Israel continues to strike Lebanon despite a fresh ceasefire. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz made it clear that the attacks would continue for the time being, while the occupation forces would not withdraw from the south. The US House of Representatives has passed legislation to provide aid to Ukraine and impose new sanctions on Russia. The latest sign that some Republicans are willing to defy party leaders and push back against President Donald Trump. The House voted 226 to 195 for the Ukraine Support Act, which reached the floor after languishing for months. A handful of Republicans joined Democrats in signing a discharge petition to force the vote. On Thursday, 18 Republicans and one independent who normally votes with them joined Democrats to pass the bill. The US has imposed sanctions on Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel and some affiliated people and entities. The US Treasury Department's website showed that the sanctions also targeted 4 other people and 5 entities, including Diaz-Canel's wife, Liz Cuesta Peraza, 2 members of the Castro family, and the Ministry of the Revolutionary Armed Forces. The sanctions were announced as President Donald Trump told reporters that the US wanted Cuba to be a nicely run country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has published an open letter inviting Russian President Vladimir Putin to direct talks aimed at ending more than 4 years of war. In the letter, Zelenskyy proposed a leaders' meeting and called for a full ceasefire throughout any negotiations, saying diplomacy should begin from the front lines. He also argued that peace efforts should not be delayed as international attention remains focused on conflicts elsewhere, including the Middle East. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Moscow would defeat Ukraine on the battlefield if necessary, but was ready to end the war via diplomacy and honor unspecified compromises he said had been agreed with President Donald Trump. Speaking at an economic forum, Putin said Russian forces were advancing on the battlefield and urged Kyiv to accept the compromises as well. Marjan Satrapi, the Iranian-French artist, filmmaker, and author of the autobiographical graphic novel Persepolis, has died, aged 56. French President Emmanuel Macron's office said her passing is that of a figure of French culture and of an artist enamored of freedom, whose work carried a universal message and had earned her immense international renown. A statement released by members of her family to the French news agency AFP said she had died of sadness a little over a year after the death of her husband, Swedish actor, producer and screenwriter Mattias Reeper. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samaa.tv. Thank you for watching SAMAA News.